Josh Rhodes. Wow. Did I enjoy talking to Josh? Cryptocurrency. What is it about? Do you understand the difference between Bitcoin and the other coins and decentralized currencies and how what fiat currencies are, the governmental currencies and how it compares and how does decentralized currency work? He's Josh got a great YouTube channel, crypto y'all. He's from Alabama, really smart gentleman, very humble, by the way. Keeps saying that he's not, but he most certainly is. But just everything about crypto and the difference between Bitcoins and the other coins, and what El Salvador went completely to Bitcoin, and so how other nations had a big conference there recently as to what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, and how assets can be frozen. But just a fascinating discussion. I learned a lot. I learned a lot from watching his videos, and then I learned even more talking to him. I know you'll do the same. Thanks so much for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business? And it lasted over 25 years. Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Josh Rhodes, thank you so much for doing this. How is cryptocurrency right now?
Well, it depends on your mindset and who you are. If you were ready for a dip and you love to buy blood in the streets and fear in the markets, then right now is an awesome time, and you're making investments for generational wealth. If you bought high, you're kind of sweating it. That's kind of the state of the union. Yeah.
I wrote that down, Josh. Blood in the streets and fear. Is that where we are?
Yeah, we're at maximum fear in the markets. No matter what market you're looking at, right? Crypto, NASDAQ, Dow Jones Industrial, S&P 500, everything's hurting because the Federal Reserve is, doing quantitative tightening and methodically raising these rates, and they seem to be sticking to their guns as an update to their latest minutes from their meeting. So, don't fight the Fed is the popular phrase.
Are they doing the right thing?
I think they're late. I think they should have done this sooner, and so now it's going to feel a lot more dramatic. There was probably a more methodical way to do this in a less dramatic whiplash kind of way. Like the markets feel a whiplash. I think the economy has been in a recession for months now. Obviously, that's a retroactive analysis because you have to have data to prove to show it. I think pretty soon we're going to get data that shows that we have been. Markets are always ahead of economies, and so the markets have been in a downturn honestly since December. So now we're kind of like hitting bedrock. It's almost like we're scraping bone, and it hurts and it stinks. But usually that means we're poised for a rebound. of some sort. So we'll see. There's a lot of macroeconomic forces beyond the Fed too that could change trajectories.
Did the pandemic help this, accelerate this, have any influence at all?
Oh yeah, I mean, 40% of U.S. dollar supply has been printed in the last 2.5 years out of
Wow.
stimulus. So the inflation that the Fed is attacking currently as their primary priority is self-induced, for lack of better
Hmm.
words. So the if you were in the markets the last 2 or 3 years, I mean, it doesn't matter which asset class, you've seen incredible accretive value and appreciation. But now it's time to pay the piper,
Hmm.
and liquidity has to be withdrawn to protect the world reserve currency.
So why do you love cryptocurrency?
I love it because at critical mass and at mass adoption, it will allow us to outpace the very thing that you were just asking me 2 or 3 questions about, which is government manipulation, and to have an apolitical store of value and wealth. It'll be a decentralized, incorruptible, um, non-manipulate, truly Austrian economic vehicle
Mm,
for free market, and I think it's the ultimate expression. And this can be a double-edged sword, a two-edged sword. It's the ultimate expression of self-reliance and autonomy. Meaning, crypto can be this decentralized tool, mechanism, currency, technology that you and I are 100% responsible for our stuff. Now, if you get scammed, you get scammed. If you are opportunistic, you're opportunistic, and there's not a
mm,
third party out there, kind of policing your ability. For example, not to get too wordy, but I think Bitcoin will lift billions of people globally out of poverty.
wow.
And many Bitcoin maximalists would agree with me. I didn't discover that. It's just almost a pseudo religious belief, because people are poor because they can't own. There's something systemically keeping them from owning property. Well, we believe that crypto is property. It's just digital assets.
Mm,
It's kind of like, it sounds crazy to talk about, but like, think about 30 years ago when people were talking about the internet and how crazy this internet, this interconnectivity, this network, this light speed of information was. Well, we're just moving into a digital asset environment. So if you've got a satellite or a cell phone signal in a third world country right now, you can own property, which United States citizens and any free democracies understand to be usually core to their constitutions and
mm,
like bill of rights, and like the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of property ownership. So having an internet connection on my phone, like right now, I can buy Bitcoin in an instant and send it to you, and we can exchange property. We can have trade without anyone else's arbitration. And I
mm.
think that's going to help lift billions of people out of poverty. That's just one utility out of hundreds.
Because we see, like, you could buy a Tesla with Bitcoin, and you could actually purchase real kind of, I don't want to say real goods, but goods that you could otherwise purchase with our currency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can use it as collateral. Like I last year during the bull market of 2021, I used my Bitcoin as collateral to buy 2 rental properties
Hmm.
uh, in real life, and I was able to use the cash flow from the rental properties to pay off the loans against my Bitcoin. I didn't have to
Wow.
go through a bank. I didn't have to go through a 6 week underwriting and closing process. I just had US dollar fiat loans in my bank account in 24 hours because they took custody, temporary custody of my Bitcoin. And they said, hey, this is collateral. If you don't pay us back, we keep your Bitcoin. Because what they know is that Bitcoin has gone up 150% year over year since the beginning. So they know they've got an accretive asset. They know I want a different asset class called real estate. And so we were able to bargain without any other interference.
Do banks typically allow Bitcoin as collateral?
Not all banks, not traditional financial institutions, but it's becoming more widely adopted. But there are plenty of lenders that you can find now within an arm's reach that act as central exchanges. So imagine like your TD Ameritrade or your E-Trades of the world that you may have had a self-directed stock portfolio. You buy stocks with it. Well, there's a crypto version called central exchanges, and there are many central exchanges who, since they already have a custodial service, they're like, okay, well, we'll loan you U.S. dollars in or your fiat currency of choice in exchange for holding your Bitcoin as collateral, because they are in the business of collateralizing and holding and being a custodian of crypto, large cap crypto projects. And so it just makes sense for them. They already have the infrastructure, and it's profitable and it's good for both parties, and they get to make interest, income off of it, just same
Hmm.
way that traditional banks do.
Now you mentioned that cryptocurrency is going up 150% a year,
Year
and
over year.
year over year.
Yep.
And how about
Yep.
this year, where we are now?
Bitcoin right now is, I think it's 57% off of its all-time high, which was Thanksgiving. If you're an American listening to this, United
Mm.
States, around the end of November, we're about 57% off of that all-time high. So we're down right now. I'm dollar cost averaging as an investor, which means I'm buying areas of prices. I'm buying not in big chunks, but I'm buying areas on the charts. So, $100 a day here, maybe an injection of $500,000, $5,000 at different times if I feel like we're getting closer to the bottom. But really, no one knows the bottom, no one knows the top, and so dollar cost averaging is kind of the rule of thumb.
But Bitcoin itself is a cryptocurrency. How, if it's truly centralized and not influenced by other parameters, how can it be down now? Explain that, please.
It's a great question. Just because it's decentralized doesn't mean it's impermeable to market forces.
Hmm.
And if you think about it this way, the easiest metric to follow is market cap. There's a lot of financial metrics out there, and I don't have a Harvard MBA in economics. I'm a country boy from Alabama. I'm an entrepreneur. I just kind of cracked my own little code that I use with crypto. But actually, the way I got into it was I read Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad 20 something years ago, got into real estate, and then when I fell into crypto, I had a language for an asset class, and
Hmm.
it made sense, and I became passionate. But it's susceptible right now to any other market, the way any other market is, because right now, if you look at Bitcoin and crypto combined, and they actually are different, like Bitcoin, and then you got everything else. But if we
Hmm.
put it all together, you're looking at about a $1 to $2 trillion market cap. Um, Compare that to the traditional financial world, you're talking about trillions and trillions and hundreds of trillions of dollars.
Wow.
And gold, our one of our favorite mainstay stores of value, has a $10 trillion market cap, but it's
Hmm.
been around for thousands of years. So as Bitcoin's adoption increases, and as you get more critical mass, more people, you'll get less volatility. So right now, less than 3% of the world owns crypto. 20% of Americans own crypto.
Hmm.
When that number gets up in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s in America, and probably above 10 or 20% globally, you'll start seeing more consistent prices. But even yesterday, prior to you and me talking, JP Morgan, largest bank in America, came out and said that Bitcoin is now their preferred alternative asset class
Wow.
over anything else. So you see institutional adoption coming in now. But until the true institutional adoption starts happening, which means We do want and need more government regulation. As much as that sounds not fun, markets hate uncertainty.
I see.
And so markets need certainty. Hey, what are our rules of engagement? One of the biggest things that could happen, for example, for Bitcoin's price is for sovereign wealth funds and pension plans to be able to purchase it legally,
Hmm.
um, without fear of becoming deregulated or penalized by the SEC or other FTCs, et cetera. And so they need that kind of rule of engagement. That's not happening yet, but you're starting to see it. We're waiting any day, hopefully, for example, a Bitcoin spot ETF to be approved by the SEC. If that happens, it's going to open up a ton of exposure from retail investors globally to be able to participate in direct Bitcoin exposure, which will drive the price through the roof.
You mentioned earlier in the conversation that until we get to critical mass, until we get to,
Mm.
mass adoption, and numbers you just cited, less than 3% worldwide and about 20% here in the US, that those numbers need to increase to about how much to get to those points, do you believe?
I don't know, honestly, I don't want to make something up,
Hmm.
but I do think if you follow a lot of the major tech hedge fund personalities out there who are usually closer to the pin on crypto from an institutional standpoint than a lot of your traditional financial advisors and investors are. They're looking at Bitcoin the same way they're looking at gold, and they're saying,
Hmm.
okay, the trajectory so far. So, for example, Fidelity Investments, they have $10 trillion, $11 trillion of assets under management. They dropped a paper in February called Bitcoin First. They basically said in a 21-page paper that Bitcoin is a superior form of money. Now, I
Hmm.
can get into those characteristics, but they basically diagram it. Kind of the way we used to dissect a frog in biology class, like they did the same thing with Bitcoin compared to fiat currencies. And they came out and said, this is a superior form of money. And I think what's got to happen is Metcalfe's law of adoption, which basically states any telecommunication network that adopts more and more people becomes more and more valuable.
Hmm.
And the more adoption that happens, it's almost like all ships rise with the tide. So if you compare the adoption rate of Bitcoin with internet and mobile phone technology, it paces right with those two
Wow.
movements. And so if you keep running the numbers out, basically you're looking at a possibility of Bitcoin eclipsing the market cap of gold in the year 2030 or so, maybe 2035, near a $10 trillion market cap. And that thing's been around for thousands of years, and Bitcoin's been around for 13. So it's a really amazing moment in history that we get to live through and watch.
Who owns Bitcoin?
Nobody. That's the wonderful part about it.
So who created it?
Well, it's a pseudonymous founder named Satoshi Yakamori, and they remained anonymous purposefully because the whole idea, the religion, if you will,
Hmm.
of Bitcoin is to not have a central figure, both from an institutional or from a personality standpoint. It needs to be so now what you have when I explain what Bitcoin is, for example, to people, before I talk about it being a currency, it's actually a peer-to-peer network. It's the largest computer network on the planet. People
Hmm.
don't realize that. But it's a decentralized network of computers. Those are computers that are made up of, these folks that that are they have mining rigs maybe in their attic or in their garage you've heard about, or massive warehouses of major companies that have thousands of Bitcoin mining rigs, whatever. They're all part of the Bitcoin network. They're all part of the Bitcoin decentralized network. And the thing that it owns itself. It's ran by the algorithm, this incorruptible, unhackable um, awesome algorithm that is immutable. You can't claw back a transaction. If I accidentally send you 5 Bitcoin, and I don't know you and you don't know me, and all of a sudden you've got 5 Bitcoin, you don't have to send it back.
Hmm.
I can't take it back. There's no central authority like there is maybe like the FDIC in the United States. There's no insurance policy. So that's where it's individual responsibility can be a two-edged sword. At the same time, if you live in Ukraine and someone invades your country, or if you live in Russia and your authoritarian leader does something to make sanctions come down hard, and now I can't buy anything or send money to family and friends, what do? You need an apolitical form of currency. If you're a refugee and you go over a border somewhere and you're in another country with another current, like what are you going to, you don't have your old money. What do? You have Bitcoin, and you can exchange it. So I think that's the future. Obviously, that's an extreme example with refugees and wars,
Sure.
but it's a relevant example of what happens when a government or Wall Street. I mean, how many times has Wall Street screwed over Main Street?
Right.
I lived through 2008 subprime
So did
mortgage as
I.
a real estate investor.
So did
You
I.
know, like so. What do we do? Well,
Horrible.
no one owns it.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story, Josh. Nobody went to jail for that either. But so my question is like, so is there a finite amount of currency that Bitcoin has? I mean, if we got to this, mass audience where, you know, people started pouring millions of dollars in, like where's the trade-off? There used to be a case where we had gold that backed up the US currency. Really, I think that went
Yeah,
away a while ago. But what
that's
is the paradigm there in Bitcoin?
What a fantastic question. Yeah, so US dollar, US went off of the gold standard in 1971 with Nixon. Ironically, Russia has now moved back to the gold standard. Um,
Huh.
that's another story. But in an effort to stabilize because of sanctions and stuff,
Sanctions, yeah.
Bitcoin, Bitcoin is the ultimate scarcity play outside of land. Growing up, people used to say, "Hey, God ain't making no, He ain't
Right.
making no more land,"
Right.
right? And so when the Bitcoin algorithm was launched, I'm a word picture guy. Like I just think of these people obviously are way smarter than me, and that created this incredible mechanism, this decentralized network. But it's almost like the view of God that some people have, that he turned creation, like he spun a top and walked away. That's kind of what happened with Bitcoin,
Hmm.
except it's a perpetual top. It's running without anyone. You can't pull the plug on it. For example, you have to pull the plug on millions of computers simultaneously. All these redundancies, these safe balance checks and balances. And so, what makes it valuable? The fact that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin in circulation ever, and I think depending on where we are right now, I think we've mined 19 million of those to date.
Hmm.
So there will come a time when mining Bitcoin becomes less advantageous. It already is way more competitive, way more watered down. Miners now do not get the ROI that they did in the early days of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, if you read the white paper, is the currency meant to reward the miners for providing the CPU energy or the
Oh,
computer
horsepower.
computation
Yeah.
power
Yep.
globally.
So if I buy one Bitcoin, what's it, a $30,000, whatever it's
Yeah.
worth now, where does that money go?
Well, you'll buy that Bitcoin through a centralized exchange. And that centralized exchange is tied in. I'm going to dumb this down
Please.
probably too much, but basically, they're tied in and they are exchanging on your behalf your fiat dollars for the Bitcoin currency or the information. It's technically it's data,
I'm
and
sorry,
so
Josh.
whatever.
I don't mean
Yeah.
to, you keep on using the term fiat. You use it a couple times. I keep on forgetting to ask you what that is.
Fiat currency meaning US dollar, the native currency of a sovereign country.
I see.
Um, the Russian ruble, the Japanese yuan, and so the euro.
Okay.
And those are all government manipulated
Controlled currency.
currencies, which fit into the macro narrative of Bitcoin, right? Because they can be easily manipulated.
I see.
So yeah, the
Apologize.
central exchanges are our turnstile as retail investors to trade our dollars for Bitcoin or vice versa, and they have massive reserves of these coins, not just Bitcoin, but other obviously alternative coins, altcoins we call them, and that's where you go and exchange them. So, for
Hmm.
example, Coinbase just made it onto the Fortune 500 list. It's the first crypto company to kind of break into that, I believe, and but they're a publicly traded company on Wall Street. Uh, that being said, when you buy your Bitcoin on a central exchange, here's some unsolicited advice. The whole idea for us to be in crypto is to be our own bank,
Hmm.
to not rely on third parties or custodial services. A lot of people store their Bitcoin on central exchanges. The thing that they don't realize is that those central exchanges can freeze those assets, governments can freeze those assets,
Whoa.
uh, they can acquire those assets. It's very rare for that to happen, but you want to have what we call a cold wallet or a hardware wallet. If you've ever seen people with the little USB looking devices, those are the things with extreme levels of security that you want to keep to yourself, offline, in your own possession with your own pins and security codes. And that's just something I like to tell everybody.
Is Bitcoin a publicly traded company?
It's not.
It's not.
It's not. It's. I would describe it as a meta network. Like
Hmm.
it operates above and outside all of our centralized networks. Wall Street centralized network,
Right.
right? Like any of the traditional banks, centralized organizations. Bitcoin completely decentralized, not asking anybody's permission to
Hmm.
move forward. Give you a great example. 2020, I think it was 2020, China bans Bitcoin mining completely. Well, I think I might be off of a few percentage points, but I think global Bitcoin mining, uh, China made up about 30 or 40% of the total, what they call hash rate or volume of Bitcoin mining. It's a major Bitcoin mining hub. Well, guess what happened? Bitcoin didn't go to zero. It didn't. It did take a price correction for the short term. But what ended up happening was, much like a virus, it just moved. It just moved to other countries. Other opportunistic individuals around the world simply took advantage of the now open mining space and bandwidth that they could go and get more Bitcoin during the time being, because the supply of miners had been reduced by so much. And so, yeah, it operates outside of our central traditional systems.
It's amazing. And how about the criticism where it's a large footprint? It takes a lot of electricity. It takes a lot of resources to mine. Is it correct?
It's all relative, I don't want to. I don't want to be overly political, because I love conservation, and I believe in taking care of creation, but um, I think it's an over politicized
Ah,
talking point
I
that,
see.
that has been made by a lot of um, activist groups that are weaponized by central money
Hmm.
organizations like the IMF and some, global people who have global interests in keeping fiat currencies in place.
Fascinating. And are there other cryptocurrencies similar to Bitcoin where it's not publicly traded and it's truly decentralized?
Crypto is kind of like um, it's kind of like a zoo. It's like zoology. It's like it's there's all there. When you walk into a zoo, you expect to see animals, and you see animals, but there's all kinds of species.
Right.
Um, I think the Bitcoin maximalists who hear me talking would want me to say the following: there's Bitcoin and there's everything else.
Mm.
Bitcoin's the only true decentralized mechanism that we have in existence. Now, there's a lot of copycats, and there's a lot of cryptos that are emulating Bitcoin. Most of them, though, are basically software companies that are using blockchain technology, but they have to they start central they start in a centralized environment, and they have to work towards decentralization.
Hmm.
And so I'm not very familiar with any that have truly achieved what Bitcoin has achieved so far, at least that have a market cap that's noteworthy.
And how did he, the author, of Bitcoin, how did he get people to do the mining for something new like this?
A massive incentive structure. It's just, the way the open market works. And the main marketing tool that you can still Google it and download it for free. Is the Bitcoin white paper. It
Hmm.
explained it all. And
Fascinating.
it's another great example of how it's not a Ponzi scheme of some sort. Because it's taken 13 years
Right.
to where you and I are now on a podcast talking about it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it wasn't an overnight popularization. So there were some early pioneers who did a lot of thankless work, and now thankless from a societal standpoint, but now they're sitting on millions, if not billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin because they mined it early when it was easy to, get your hands on Bitcoin by providing CPUs as a miner. But the incentive was, hey, this is a finite digital asset. If you'll provide computation power and be a part of this decentralized network, which honestly it was probably for a lot of those miners, yes, it was a capitalistic, opportunistic endeavor. But I think as much as anything, it was a reaction to the subprime mortgage crisis.
Hmm.
And a lot of people just thought, in principle and philosophy, we've got to have a different way of doing money
Wow.
and stores of value in the future. So we've got to somehow build an infrastructure that can outpace central government planning.
Wow. It is genius, right? I mean,
It's yeah,
that's
it's genius. It
yeah,
truly
it
is. I wish I
really
could
is.
take credit for it.
Yeah. I mean, the way I've been in technology a long time, the way we were introduced to peer networks before there was client servers, we used to have everything peer network, but then I think the general population got relatively comfortable with it was with the trading of music and Napster and these kinds of technologies where
Yeah.
it was video and what we thought was music as well, and and you left your computer on at night and people would take and give and you'd wake up and there'd be stuff there. I mean, so this was the network was powered by everybody's kind of hard drive, so we are familiar with peer networks.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And it's I think the thing about Bitcoin that's the coolest part is, like I said, not thinking about it as money at first and
Hmm.
thinking more about it as me being able to send information to you at light speeds, no matter where we are,
Wow.
without boundaries. So, very much like an internet idea, a peer to peer network idea, but now let's add value and let's
Hmm.
add decentralization. And that starts, so like I can move $1 billion to you in a matter of moments,
Wow.
and you could be across the planet, and it doesn't take days or weeks for banks to settle. Like if people understood the banking swift system,
Hmm.
it would blow their mind how we move money not only from domestic bank to domestic bank but internationally. And I know a lot of people don't move a lot of money internationally, maybe, that are
Right.
listening to this, but that's how the world works. Like we trade amongst nations. We buy each other's debt. We buy bonds and treasure. Like China buys US debt. They export all this stuff and we pay them in US dollars that they can only buy US debt with. And
Right.
so it's this massive like exchange of value that's always happening. And in February, when America put sanctions on and seized assets on Russia, the rest of the world was like, wait a second,
Wow.
the world reserve currency nation can do that to you if you step out of line, wait. And so what's happening now is there were 44 countries that met in El Salvador just the other day saying, hey, how do we do this Bitcoin thing? Because they all know that there's a big brother, a bigger G7 power that can shut them down whenever they want to. So how do we have our own apolitical system?
You
Yeah,
mentioned
it's
El
awesome.
Salvador. Yeah, it is. It really is. And you mentioned El Salvador. They've gone completely to Bitcoin, correct?
Yeah, legalized it as made it legal tender. They have a really progressive young president. They are fueling Bitcoin miners with thermal energy from their volcanoes. They put 220 Bitcoin ATMs across the country to kind of
Wow.
help bridge the gap between traditionalism and modernism. They gave every citizen $30 in Bitcoin if they would just download the National Bitcoin app and wallet. So I think their GDP is up something like 6 to 8%, which is a big deal for a small country like
Absolutely.
that with a
Absolutely.
few million people. So yeah, I mean it's the first. I think Central Republic of Africa has done the same. Panama has legislation on the docket. So it'll continue to happen with these emerging and third world countries. And then once you see the bigger countries regulate it, that's when you can also look at the market cap and see it growing.
I just saw a documentary recently, or where people in El Salvador and some of these small kind of huts, they have the Bitcoin logo, and they have their phone, and they're paying for their
Yeah,
meal. I mean,
yeah.
I went to the grocery store this morning, and I do everything with the touch with the phone, and I pick which card and I touch it. It's only going to be a matter of time before one of those cards are Bitcoin.
I love that. As a matter of fact, what will it be like whether you're an Android or an iPhone user?
Yeah.
If Apple all of a sudden says, "Okay, we'll allow Bitcoin to be in our wallet, in Apple Wallet,
Yeah.
and it can work as a crypto, wallet, and you can use it to, it'll be huge." And I think it's just a matter of time, where the consumer electronic companies of the world just add a feature and it just explodes adoption. That's where we are basically.
Yeah, because I have money in PayPal, right? I have some money in Venmo, right? And these are just different.
Yeah.
I have a couple bank accounts and a trading account. There's just money in each. How long is it before there's just a crypto wallet? It's just one of those sources.
Well, there is my favorite hobby right now
Huh.
is I'm using this app. I'm not shilling it. I'm not affiliate, but it's called Strike. It's like the Venmo for Bitcoin. It's easy to use, and you connect your bank account to it. You can deposit X amount of dollars in it. You can buy Bitcoin in light seconds, and I can send you Bitcoin. Literally, it almost has the same interface as Venmo. It's really
Unbelievable.
cool, really easy to use. It's awesome, and I use it as my almost like my hobbyist Bitcoin. Like I'm kind of a geek. Like it's fun for me to just like be like, oh, I've got an urge for a Starbucks. Instead, I'm going to buy $25 in Bitcoin, and I'll just dial it up on my Strike app. But then I can send it. I can send it to my other wallets. I can send it to my storage wallet. I can send it to other people. I had a landscaper fixing my irrigation system yesterday, and he was like, "Do you take?" He said, "Do you have Venmo so you can pay me? It's $40." And I was like, "I'll pay you $60 in Bitcoin if you'll download this app." And he did it, and it was like, boom! He's got now he owns
Wow.
Bitcoin. It's like one more adopter. And I think that's what a lot of us need to just do is while the institutions are figuring out
Mm.
how they want to move the wealth, we just need to help evangelize peer to peer and help people see that there's massive breakthrough there on a consumer level.
So, I mean, if it came to tens of thousands or 20s of thousands of dollars in Bitcoin, Josh, do you report this on your income tax?
Yeah, first question now on the 1040 in the United States anyway is do you invest in crypto basically?
Ah.
So it's an honesty game, just like every other piece of income that you have. But it's capital gains is what you're looking at. So you're looking at short term or long term capital gains, depending if you own it for a year or more. So that's one part of where we are currently, where you don't want to use Bitcoin. as a consumer transactional currency. It's actually
See.
not a good utility for it. It's more of a gold. It's more of a store of value. The
Hmm.
ones to watch are the XRPs of the world. Again, not pumping a particular crypto, but there's a major SEC lawsuit, SEC versus Ripple, the company. But they basically have all the infrastructure, the entire network to replace the banking SWIFT system. And they all know it. All the banks know it. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, if you look at SWIFT, even now, they're trying to tout this new blockchain version of their software or their technology, but it's still so centralized. And if people knew behind the scenes how lunky it was, they would be like, "I cannot believe our world financial system is built on this." But there will be other cryptos that are better for buying a Coke Zero with than Bitcoin.
What happened to the Miami crypto thing that happened this week or last
There's
week?
a Bitcoin conference every year. It's for Bitcoin purists, evangelists. It's a part of the movement. Miami is really forward thinking. They have a mayor who's very progressive on the currency side. They have their own coin, the Miami coin.
That's what.
The mayor, I believe, takes his compensation in Bitcoin. But yeah, they're it's smart. It's great marketing for a city. New York is trying to compete with Miami now from a Bitcoin friendliness standpoint. But these are good things. It's good for adoption. These conferences are really huge.
But specifically, we heard this week that the Miami cryptocurrency like took a big hit, and
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, it's kind of like welcome to the club in a bear market.
I say,
Everything's taking a hit. Like I've got some stats here. Decentralized finance, the whole world of DeFi, which is a subset of crypto, is down 89%.
wow.
Ethereum is down 60%. The NASDAQ is down 30%. Bitcoin's down 57. So it's any coin any crypto right now is being challenged. So we're in this phase of like social Darwinism for currencies
Hmm.
or finances, where the big fish eat. The ones who have the best bones and the best muscles and conditioning and tokenomics are going to survive. They'll make it through, and then the next bull market will happen when liquidity re-enters the market, and the strong will survive. And that's why the large cap cryptos like Bitcoin, Ethereum are great places to be buying, especially if your listeners are just now getting into crypto. It's just a great
Hmm.
place to get your feet wet.
Social Darwinism. Yeah, yeah. I wrote it down and boxed it. You have a very interesting, you told, I watch a lot of you got great content on YouTube, and you
Thank you.
talk about yourself. You do a great job of educating. I learned a lot before talking with you just through your video
Oh, good.
of what I knew. Yeah. And I encourage listeners to do so. And you come from a small town in Alabama.
Yeah.
You played baseball. You had one traffic light, I believe, and
Yeah.
you talk
Yeah.
about you're one generation away
Oh,
from
yeah.
being really poor, and
Yeah.
great story, and I appreciate that. And so on the podcast, we talk a lot about discipline, Josh. We I lost a lot of weight. People ask me how, like there's some secret, and I just say discipline. So I mean, talk to me about discipline. Do you consider yourself disciplined? Do you need discipline to be in this market, especially where it is now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I circled the wagons earlier with my crypto y'all community, all of the retail investors and my members. And I basically said, hey, we've got this framework that we follow. It's called the crypto flywheel. I said, but how does it work in a bear market? Because a lot of folks in my community are new to crypto investing. And so it's discipline. It's having a framework, whether it's losing weight or making money, building wealth, or building a business, whatever you're wanting to achieve. Discipline is having a framework and applying consistency to it. And sometimes, especially in crypto and especially in any kind of capital markets, your framework will be challenged by seasonality of markets. Markets are patternistic, they come in waves, they go down, they go up. And so it's kind of like, is your ship made for the tides of the ocean? Can it survive? Can it take a beating? And so the discipline I think that comes in play when you're investing in crypto are a few things that come to mind. Number one, you need to be emotionally detached from your
Mm,
crypto investments. And the way to do that typically, especially as a newer retail investor, is to only invest the amount of money that you do not need liquid for everyday life, and it's not money that you're paying for mortgage or rent or survival, right? This is excess money. And you want to be able to zoom out and understand that we're not crypto gambling. This isn't crypto slot machines, okay? We're not playing the lottery. We want to be investors. You don't have to have an Ivy League degree to be a sophisticated crypto investor. You just need discipline. You need to be able
mm,
to go, okay, just because it goes down doesn't mean I'm going to sell. As a matter of fact, I can look at this chart and see that it's gone down 720 times in the last 3 years,
wow.
but it's gone up 876 times in the last 3 years. So there's always going to be this up and down, ebb and flow. And not being emotionally attached usually means that you have a great time horizon identified. I tell all my members, you got to have a ferociously specific desired outcome. That's first. Like, if you don't know what you want out of crypto, don't invest yet.
Mm,
Before you go, think about it. What's your time horizon? Give me a date, give me a dollar. Bottom line, I want to be creating $500 a month of passive income from decentralized finance investments in the world of crypto by December 25th, 2022. That's a ferociously
mm,
specific desired outcome.
yeah.
That's discipline. That's when you write it on a sticky note, you put it on your rearview mirror, and you fight for that, day in, day out. And I think that's one way discipline can be manifested in the crypto markets.
Fascinating. And it's there's so many factors that you can't control at all. And
That's
it's
right.
and a lot of people don't like that, including the US government, or many governments, I should say.
That's right. But that's true in everything. Like,
Right.
I'm a small business owner too. Like, I can't I'm not so sure running a small business has any more control than letting my dollars march off to war in a market. There's a lot of variables in life. That's true in our health.
That's true.
You and I could wake up tomorrow with a bad migraine, and that was out of our control too. So there's just a lot of things that perspective helps to heal, I think.
Certainly, I have business as well, and people say to me, "Must be nice not having a boss." I have more bosses now than I've ever had. Everyone that pays me is my boss, so I
Yeah, it
don't.
must be nice not having a payroll.
Exactly. So don't think you don't have a boss. I have some control of my
Right.
schedule, certainly, but I have a lot of bosses that I
That's
have to be
right.
nice to, because otherwise they won't pay me and we won't make money, and I can't pay my employees. And yeah, it's uh, fascinating kind of retrospective. What motivates
Yes.
you, Josh Rhodes?
You know, uh, gosh, I can't speak to that without speaking to a little bit of the origin story of my brand. I grew
Please.
up, like you said, in the middle of nowhere, Alabama, and I grew up watching my father be really charitable and very benevolent with his money.
Mm,
He was a Marine Corps Vietnam veteran. He came back, started a lumber sales business. Basically, kept my brother and I from growing up in extreme poverty. Like,
wow.
it was all around me. My grandmother made spaghetti sauce with ketchup because she couldn't afford ragu and tomatoes, and so I just saw my dad giving to people in our community a lot, like almost like under the table, like letting them borrow money to pay for little league jerseys and groceries. And I learned generosity at an early age, even though I didn't truly understand the extent of which he was helping people. And he just acted almost as like a shadow of a greater love that I feel like can make our world better and brighter. And so now, um, I'm driven because I want to create wealth, not so that I can live a life of like Wealth of Wall Street with, that was a crazy movie, crazy story. I
Certainly.
don't want yachts, and I don't want to go to Davos, Switzerland with all the rich people every year. I just want to be able to redeem the world around me, like make it better, help return it to a greater state, help people not feel the oppression of poverty, both physical poverty and mental poverty, because someone
Hmm.
did that for me. My dad did that for me. Now he wasn't rich, he wasn't wealthy, and so now I'm just like, well, what would happen if I could take that mindset and scale it? Like, what would happen if
Good for you.
we took that little capsule that I got from my upbringing, marry it, salt and pepper it with a little Southern hospitality, and then merge it with the greatest financial technology in history called blockchain, crypto, and Bitcoin.
Mm.
That that's what it is. That's what motivates me. It's a big vision because there's a lot of smarmy stuff out there. I
Mhm.
just got off the phone with a guy. He's invested in 15 scams. Now, to his to he just didn't stop and assess.
Oh
He
boy.
should have stopped and said, "I'm gambling. Someone needs to teach me how to fish." He kept getting into bad situations and following the wrong influence. But I just thought, man, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because somebody needs to be the Wyatt Earp in the Wild West of crypto. And so I'm hoping our crypto y'all community can be that.
That's noble. That's really, really noble, Josh. I really like that answer. And how
Thank
do you
you.
measure success?
Um, which realm?
You
Which
choose. You choose.
generally, um, I think to I think to be congruent with what I was just saying, it'll be, well, I'll use this quote. I can't help everyone get crypto rich.
Mhm.
I have my own personal capacities, obviously. A great leader once said, "You can't help everyone, so be to one person what you wish you could be to everyone."
Mm.
And so I use that as a litmus test in my individual interactions. And when I know that I've really left it all out on the field with an individual client, member, friend, whatever, those are successes that I just stack, I guess.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
maybe success is never something I truly attain, but maybe it's a collection, almost like arrows in a quiver.
That's fascinating viewpoint. Yeah. Is it an actual is it an actual, destination, or is it just the journey there?
Yeah, maybe it's the means to the end,
Mm.
rather than the end itself. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great, great answer. So, are you Auburn or Alabama? Am I allowed to ask these kind of questions to somebody in
Oh yeah,
Birmingham?
it's a contentious question, but I
Yes.
will just simply respond with two words and say roll tide.
I say. I see. That answers everything. Josh Rhodes, I really appreciate your time today. I was so excited that you accepted this. And I love learning about you and about what you do. Please tell us, how can we get in touch with you? Tell us about, Crypto Y'all, and any way to get in touch with you, please.
Oh yeah, please check out the website cryptoyall.co. That's exactly how it sounds, as country as it sounds. Cryptoyall.co. It's not .com. You can go there and grab a free training. Maybe jump on my next training session. I do about an hour 15-minute training session for everyone who's crypto curious, and just help you get into my ecosystem a little bit more. It'll subscribe you to my newsletter, and we'll have a good time.
I'll put all the episode links up. You've got Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, and YouTube. And like I said, Josh, great, great pleasure. If I make my way to Birmingham, let's have a cup of coffee, and hopefully the market will be a lot better then.
Oh yeah, if it's better, I'll even give you some bourbon and a steak. We'll just skip the
Well,
coffee.
now, now, now you said it, Josh.
Now we're friends.
Now we are friends. Josh, thank you so much. You be well. I really appreciate it.
You too, man. Thank you.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.